Greetings and welcome. In this first module, I'm interested in developing a richer and wider perspective on what is happening. So, we're going to look at history, we're going to look at neurophysiology of the human, and we're going to look at prophecies for this time. It's very important that we locate ourselves in the history of our time, simply because it gives us much more understanding. So I'd like you to settle in. I'm going to read you a passage and just take this in. Just listen closely, please. No interference, no judgments, just good listening. An empire declines when frivolity, aestheticism, hedonism, cynicism, pessimism, narcissism, consumerism, materialism, nihilism, fatalism, fanaticism, and other negative behaviors and attitudes suffuse the population. Politics is increasingly corrupt. Life increasingly unjust. A cabal of insiders accrues wealth and power at the expense of the citizenry, fostering a fatal opposition of interests between haves and have-nots. The majority lives for bread and circuses, worships celebrities instead of divinities, throws off social and moral restraints, especially on sexuality, shirks duties, but insists on entitlements. How accurate a description of now do you think this felt like? For me, it was stunning when I first read it. I read it in the work of Sir John Glubb, which is the foundational history for this book, Who Do We Choose to Be? And John Glubb studied 13 civilizations. He was a senior army officer in the British Army. He studied the histories of 13 great civilizations that had been in the Mideast and moving on eastward to Asia. And what he found in those 13 civilizations is such a well-established pattern of collapse that's what I just read to you. These behaviors that we're now dealing with, that we're now blaming our leaders for or blaming ourselves for, take this in, please. This is predictable behavior at the end of a civilization. Now, one of the things we have to realize is that everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Everything in life is cyclical. Think about what's happening in your body as you age and grow. Think about your garden. Think about the trees, if they're deciduous trees. Think about the seasons. Everything in life is cyclical. And yet we seem, especially if you're American, to believe in the myth of progress, that we can overcome anything that's been troubled or in the history of another civilization, that we will keep going because we are the best there ever was. Or we will save ourselves from this decline through our technology and through our great caring hearts. Well, history has cycles, and it's important to place ourselves in these cycles. So Sir John Glubb defined 6 stages of every civilization that begins with great idealism, self-sacrifice, and then it progresses with more militarism that creates success over whatever empire they're conquering. And then it settles into commercialism and mercantilism, and people start to lead very comfortable lives, and nobody really cares about idealism, common values, and the army is a separate unit that is called upon to defend us so we have comfortable lives. This pattern takes 10 generations, 250 years. We just celebrated America's 249th birthday. But the last pattern is the pattern of decadence. And this is what I just read to you. Look at what's happening here that fits this description: frivolity, aestheticism, narcissism, and the increased politicization of everything, the elites taking everything for themselves and not giving a damn about what's happening to regular people. This is the pattern of collapse. Peoples worship not divinities, but celebrities. And those celebrities are musicians, actors, and sports heroes. Now, this pattern tracks the Byzantium civilization, the Baghdad civilization, many times in Egyptian civilization, which had many cycles. It's what happened with the Aztecs. It's what happened with the Incas. It's what has happened in some reports with more than 24 civilizations. The pattern has such specificity that when I read that at the end, in the last stage of decadence, people demand everything but give nothing, that it's pure self-preservation and selfishness and politicization, and nobody sees the true enemy at the gates. And in our case, the true enemy clearly has been climate, Mother Gaia, pushing back, just doing what she told us she would do, following her laws. And we, in our great arrogance and blindness, thought that we could make it different. And of course, nature always bats last. So we are here in this last stage of decadence. And if you're not with me so far, just notice, as I noticed, that the Presidential Medals of Honor in the United States are given very rarely to scientists, but they're given to sports heroes. They're given to our rock stars, and they're given to our movie stars. That's well described in the pattern of collapse. So it's important to place ourselves within this history and not get lost in any fantasy about, no, we're going to figure our way out of this because we're so smart and we're so technologically advanced. And that is simply not true. Other civilizations, long, long time ago, were much more advanced than we are now, knowing how to work with time and space and movement and buildings in a way that is now very strongly becoming revealed to us. So that's important to place ourselves in this history, but this time has also been acknowledged and described in prophecies. So there are many prophecies, and one that Joanna Macy made quite famous is the Shambhala warrior prophecy. Joanna Macy was given this by her Tibetan teacher, and it became one of her life's missions to make sure we all understood this prophecy. It's so descriptive. There comes a time when all life on earth is in danger. Great barbarian powers have arisen. Although these powers spend their wealth in preparations to annihilate one another, they have much in common: weapons of unfathomable destructive power and technologies that lay waste our world. In this era, when the future of sentient life hangs by the frailest of threads, the kingdom of Shambhala emerges. This kingdom of Shambhala is known to have been a place where people were fully conscious and they awakened, which is our task now, although it's a crapshoot whether we're going to awaken in time. But my Tibetan teacher said this was a true kingdom. It was real. It wasn't just a made up expression of mindfulness of how to be awake. No, and all Tibetan teachers say that time is now. Now, there's another prophecy more current from the Hopi Nation in the Southwest, Arizona, and New Mexico of the United States. And this prophecy I used to organize this book on perseverance. They issued this in 2000 at the turn of the millennium, and it is addressed to my fellow swimmers. Here is a river flowing very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid, who will try to hold on to the shore. They are being torn apart and will suffer greatly. Know that the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, and keep our heads above water. And I say, see who is there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and journey come to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves and banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration, for we are the ones we have been waiting for. Yes. Now, this great line, we are the ones we have been waiting for, was coined in a poem by the African American poet June Jordan. And she wrote it in tribute to the 40,000 South African women who organized a protest on the capital of Pretoria without phones, without internet. They organized themselves to appear on one day in 1956 that is now hallowed day in the history of South Africa. They arrived with children in protest of the new banning laws, which were the ultimate discriminations against Black Africans. So we need to realize that wherever you look, I could read you dozens of prophecies for this time. One that I'm particularly attracted to is just an image given to me by a Lakota Sioux Native American. He said, if we think of Mother Earth as the dog, humans are just fleas riding on her back. And sometime soon, she's just going to give it a shake and we'll all be thrown off. That's one way of viewing our possible extinction, which we have caused. But what I want to make clear is that instead of going to blame and analysis that locates the problems only in this time, like if we'd had better leaders, or if we had protested more, or if we had just been smarter, we wouldn't be at this brink of collapse. All of that is disputed by the determinism of a pattern. You know, life organizes in patterns. It takes very complex information and puts it into a simple form. So it's just a recognizable pattern like a strange attractor is or a fractal is. So think about this, please, because it's far too easy to get lost in blame and criticism, even though we must protest, yes. But this is also the end of this civilization, and it was well described for others as it is now for us.
Find out more on advire.life.